You want the truth about anger? Not the version they package and sell you in therapy pamphlets. Not the breathing exercises your HR department emails you after a team conflict. The raw, uncomfortable, architecturally precise truth about why you lose control, who profits from it, and how to seal that vulnerability forever. Here it is: every single time you get angry, you are not expressing power. You are confessing weakness. You are broadcasting, in real time, the exact coordinates of your psychological vulnerabilities to anyone intelligent enough to read them. The modern world has convinced men that emotional volatility is strength. That a bad temper signals danger. That snapping at someone who disrespects you proves you have standards. This is one of the most effective lies ever constructed, and it has kept an entire generation of men operating as predictable, manipulable machines. What I am about to walk you through is not anger management. Anger management is a cage with a longer leash. What this is a complete psychological reconstruction. A method of rewiring how you perceive threat, how you process disrespect, and how you exist in a world full of people who will, at every available opportunity, attempt to use your own emotions against you. By the end of this, the concept of being provoked will feel as foreign to you as a lion being provoked by the opinion of a sheep. Not because you suppressed the anger. Not because you masked it. But because you will understand the mechanism so completely that the trigger itself becomes invisible. You cannot be baited by a trap you can see through entirely. This is the architecture of the untouchable mind. Let us begin. Phase 1, the anatomy of the trigger. Before you can dismantle a trap, you must understand exactly how it was built. Why do you get angry? The surface answer is obvious: someone said something cruel, someone challenged your competence, someone stepped on something you value. But that is the stage set, not the actual mechanism. The actual mechanism runs much deeper, and until you see it clearly, you will keep falling into it. You get angry because your identity has a fracture line. And someone found it. The ego constructs a story about who you are. Competent. Respected. Valued. Capable. That story is not your identity. It is a psychological projection. A performance you run continuously to manage your place in the social hierarchy. When someone challenges that projection, whether through an insult, dismissal, or disrespect, the ego reads it as an existential attack. Not just, this person thinks less of me, but on a subconscious level, what if they are right, and the story I have been telling myself is a fiction? That terror is what ignites the anger. The anger is not a response to their behavior. It is a shield against your own doubt. Consider what this means practically. Every time you react to provocation, you are not defending your honor. You are revealing that your sense of self is so fragile, so dependent on external confirmation, that a stranger with a cheap insult can crack it open in under 3 seconds. You are not projecting strength. You are projecting a target. In 1807, Napoleon Bonaparte cornered his foreign minister, Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, before the entire imperial court. Napoleon was incandescent with rage. He screamed accusations of betrayal, insulted Talleyrand's intelligence, his loyalty, his lineage. He threw what can only be described as a spectacular imperial tantrum, circling Talleyrand like a man possessed, voice cracking, face red, hands shaking. Talleyrand stood still. Utterly, chillingly still. His posture did not change. His expression remained one of polite, almost bored indifference. He absorbed the entire storm without so much as a blink. When Napoleon finally exhausted himself and left the room, Talleyrand turned to the assembled court with perfect composure and delivered one of the most devastating lines in diplomatic history: "What a pity that so great a man should be so badly raised." Understand what happened in that room. Napoleon, the most powerful man in Europe, the conqueror of nations, handed Talleyrand complete psychological dominance the moment he lost control. He gave a subordinate the position of observer, the clinical high ground. He confirmed, before witnesses, that Talleyrand had gotten under his skin deeply enough to unravel the Emperor of France. Talleyrand did not win that confrontation by arguing back. He won it by refusing to descend. The man who loses his composure first, loses. Always. Without exception. The trigger is not the problem. Your relationship to the trigger is the problem. And that relationship can be redesigned. Phase 2. The neuroscience of your own betrayal. Here is something that should disturb you: when you get angry, you become less intelligent. Measurably, biologically, functionally less capable of rational thought. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. When a perceived threat triggers your amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster deep in your brain's limbic system, it launches a chemical cascade that floods your prefrontal cortex with cortisol and adrenaline. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for everything that separates you from an animal: long-term planning, nuanced reasoning, impulse control, strategic thinking. Under the amygdala hijack, as researcher Daniel Goleman named it, your access to these functions is severely degraded. You do not simply become emotional. You become cognitively impaired. In this state, you will say things you cannot unsay. You will make decisions you cannot unmake. You will reveal information about your psychological structure that you will spend weeks trying to reclaim. And the worst part? While you are operating in this diminished state, whoever triggered you is watching you with full access to their faculties, reading every tell, cataloging every vulnerability you expose. Manipulators, and specifically what psychologists term dark triad personalities, those who score high in narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, understand this instinctively. They do not provoke you because they hate you. They provoke you because they want to see your source code. They want to discover which levers make you dance, which buttons cause you to abandon your strategy and enter their arena on their terms. If they can make you angry, they own your next move. You become a predictable system. They input the variable, they know the output. You have become a vending machine of reactions, and they have memorized the keypad. Ask yourself the uncomfortable question: do you enjoy being predictable? Do you enjoy knowing that someone with low enough character and a cheap enough comment can walk into your presence and commandeer your nervous system within 60 seconds? Every outburst is a demonstration. But not the demonstration you think. It is not a demonstration of passion or principles or refusal to be disrespected. It is a demonstration that your inner world is accessible, controllable, and available to anyone willing to pay the low price of a calculated insult. Refuse to be readable. Refuse to be programmable. Make yourself a closed system. Phase 3, the sovereign gap. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He lost his wife. He lost his manuscript. He lost everything that constitutes a human life except for one thing that no guard could confiscate, no commandant could strip, no system of brutality could reach. He called it the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose your response to any given stimulus. In Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl articulated something that sounds simple until you truly absorb its weight. Between what happens to you and what you do next, there is a gap. Most people have collapsed that gap entirely. Something happens, they react. Instantly, automatically, reflexively. They are not choosing. They are executing a program installed in them by years of unexamined habit, childhood conditioning, and social patterning. The work, the real work, is expanding that gap. When someone attacks you verbally, the stimulus is delivered. From the moment it lands to the moment you respond, something happens inside you. For the undisciplined mind, that process takes a fraction of a second and bypasses all executive reasoning entirely. The reaction emerges from reptilian instinct. It is not a response. It is a reflex. Expanding the gap means inserting consciousness between stimulus and action. It means catching the signal the moment it arrives, holding it in your awareness, and asking, what is actually happening here? Not what appears to be happening. What is actually happening? What is actually happening, in nearly every case of provocation, is this: a person in some form of psychological distress is attempting to transfer that distress outward. They are not commenting on reality. They are projecting their internal state onto an available target. The attack is not information about you. It is information about them. Marcus Aurelius governed the Roman Empire at its peak. He commanded armies, managed senators, dealt daily with corruption, treachery, and the incompetence of men who held enormous power. He could have executed anyone who annoyed him. He chose instead to write, privately, in journals never intended for publication, about the art of maintaining inner sovereignty against the constant friction of difficult human beings. He wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it." He trained himself to look at aggressive, toxic, or manipulative people the way a blacksmith looks at sparks from an anvil. Inevitable. A natural byproduct of the work. Harmless, as long as you are wearing the right protection. He did not ask why the sparks existed. He did not argue with them. He simply wore his apron and kept working. This is the posture available to you. Not detachment born of indifference to life, but detachment born of clarity about what actually requires your energy and what does not. Most provocations do not require your energy. They require nothing from you. They are sparks. The sovereign gap is the space where you decide that. The space where you remain the author of your own conduct rather than a character in someone else's story. Phase 4, Clinical Pity and the Pathology of Offense. There is a concept in psychoanalytic theory called projective identification. It is one of the most insidious mechanisms in human social behavior, and understanding it will permanently change how you experience disrespect. When a person carries an unbearable internal reality, shame, inadequacy, rage at their own failures, they cannot metabolize it internally. The psychological weight exceeds their capacity for self-regulation. So they look for a host. Someone stable. Someone composed. Someone who represents the internal state they cannot achieve. And they attack. The attack is not about you. The attack is an attempt at a data transfer. They are trying to upload their internal virus into your hardware. If they can make you feel the worthlessness, the agitation, the humiliation that they live inside constantly, they experience temporary relief. Like lancing a wound. They export the poison, and for a moment, the pressure drops. If you absorb the bait and lose your composure, the transfer is complete. You are now carrying their psychological garbage in your nervous system. Your cortisol spikes. Your sleep degrades. Your focus scatters. You replay the confrontation for days. You are doing their emotional labor, at the direct expense of your own mental health. This is the actual tragedy of losing your temper. Not the social embarrassment. Not the image damage. The tragedy is that you have become a waste receptacle for someone else's unresolved pathology. You absorbed the exact poison they were trying to offload. The antidote is a specific cognitive reframe, clinical pity. Not empathy. Empathy requires you to feel their experience. That is dangerous here, because what they are experiencing is designed to be contagious. Clinical pity is colder. It is the posture of a researcher examining a subject with a condition. Dispassionate. Curious. Separate. When someone disrespects you, the trained response is to ask, silently, without any expression, how damaged must this person be to behave this desperately for a reaction? That single question changes the entire relational geometry. You stop seeing a threat. You start seeing a symptom. You cannot rage at a symptom. You cannot be threatened by someone you are clinically examining. The power structure inverts completely. Cato the Younger was a Roman statesman of legendary composure and almost mythological principles. He was despised by powerful men, including Julius Caesar, who saw in Cato's unbending integrity a standing rebuke to their own ambitions. One afternoon in the Roman Forum, a political adversary approached Cato and spat directly in his face. In front of witnesses. With full contempt. Cato did not move. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not raise his voice. He produced a cloth, wiped his face with complete serenity, and said only, "I shall assure everyone, Lentulus, that those who say you cannot use your mouth are mistaken." One line. No anger. No theatrics. And he evaporated the man's power over him entirely in a single sentence, delivered with the calm of someone commenting on the weather. This is what clinical pity looks like in action. Cato did not accept the offense into his emotional reality. He observed it, named it, and discarded it. He treated the act of being spat upon with the same equanimity you might treat an unexpected gust of wind. Inconvenient. Brief. Entirely beneath sustained emotional investment. To be offended is always, without exception, a choice. Choosing offense hands your emotional baseline to whoever chose to offend you. Refusing offense is not passivity. It is dominance of the highest order. Phase 5, Rewiring the Physiology. Everything discussed so far operates at the level of perception and belief. And it is foundational. But there is a biological layer beneath the psychological one, and if you do not address it, your body will betray your intentions every time pressure spikes. When the amygdala fires, the hypothalamus immediately signals the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart rate accelerates. Blood floods your muscles. Your vision narrows. Your jaw tightens. Your voice changes pitch. These are not things you choose. They are automated biological responses to perceived threat that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to prepare you for physical combat. The problem is that your ancient nervous system cannot distinguish between a saber-toothed predator and a passive-aggressive colleague in a Monday morning meeting. The threat response is the same. And in a social context, that response is a liability. It is visible. It is readable. It hands information to anyone watching. You cannot simply decide not to have the physiological response. But you can learn to intercept and reverse it faster than anyone around you can register it, which produces an effect that is genuinely unsettling to those trying to provoke you. Stanford neuroscientist Andrew Huberman's research on respiratory physiology has identified a specific breathing pattern that directly activates the parasympathetic nervous system, effectively overriding the sympathetic stress response. It is called the physiological sigh, 2 sharp inhales through the nose in rapid succession, fully inflating the alveoli of the lungs, followed by a single slow, extended exhale through the mouth. This pattern offloads carbon dioxide from the bloodstream more rapidly than standard breathing, which directly slows the heart rate and reduces the adrenaline spike within seconds. It is, in effect, a manual reset of your stress response. And it is invisible. You can execute it while maintaining eye contact with someone who is actively trying to destabilize you. Here is the practice: the moment you feel the heat rise in your chest, the moment you recognize the biological signal, you do not react to it or suppress it. You intercept it. 2 sharp nasal inhales, filling the lungs completely. 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. And while you execute it, you do not look away. You maintain relaxed eye contact and let your posture soften deliberately. What happens to your opponent in this moment is psychologically significant. They came in with escalating energy. They expected to be met with matching escalation, which would confirm their power to affect you. Instead, they watch you slow down. Your blink rate drops. Your shoulders drop. Your voice, when you eventually speak, is lower and slower than it was before they started. You have visually demonstrated that their highest intensity registered on your system as manageable. As ordinary. As barely worth adjusting to. In the animal kingdom, the predator does not rush. Rushing is the behavior of prey. The lion walks because it has nothing to prove and no reason to accelerate. When you deliberately slow your physiology in the face of someone else's aggression, you communicate something at a pre-verbal, instinctive level that no argument can convey. You are not threatened. Not as a performance. Not as a mask. Biologically, in your actual nervous system, you are not responding to them as a threat. This destroys the manipulator's leverage more completely than any clever response ever could. They brought a storm. You became a mountain. Phase 6, the economy of your attention. Reframe human interaction. Not as social exchange, but as economic transaction. Your attention is capital. Your emotional stability is an asset. Your neurochemical balance, the hormonal environment inside your body that governs your cognition, mood, and decision-making, is your most valuable resource. And every single day, without exception, people will attempt to extract it from you for free. They do not call it extraction. They call it conflict, debate, confrontation, or just venting. But the functional reality is identical. They want a portion of your focus, your peace, and your energy to fuel their own emotional economy. When you engage with provocation, you are subsidizing their dysfunction with your own resources. Julius Caesar understood the complete indifference of the truly powerful to those who attempt to define their reality. In 75 BC, before he had conquered Gaul or crossed the Rubicon, Caesar was a young aristocrat sailing the Aegean when his ship was captured by Cilician pirates. These were not sophisticated adversaries. They were coastal raiders who treated kidnapping as a business model. They demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver, a substantial sum. Caesar laughed. He told them they clearly had no idea who they had captured and insisted they raise the ransom to 50 talents, which they did, bewildered. For 38 days he lived among them. He did not behave as a captive. He behaved as a temporarily inconvenienced aristocrat. He wrote speeches and poetry in his cell and read them aloud to the pirates. When they failed to respond with sufficient enthusiasm, he told them plainly that they were illiterate savages with no appreciation for literature. He joined their athletic competitions and bested them. He ordered them to keep quiet when he wanted to sleep. When he felt magnanimous, he told them stories. When he did not, he dismissed them. And throughout all of it, in a tone of absolute conversational calm, he informed them repeatedly that once he was released, he would return with a fleet, capture all of them, and crucify every single one. The pirates, naturally, assumed this was eccentric bravado from a strange aristocrat. It was not. It was a statement of biological fact delivered without anger because there was no anger. Only clarity. The ransom was paid. Caesar was released. He sailed immediately to the nearest port, assembled a private fleet using his own funds, returned to the island, captured the entire crew, recovered his silver, and crucified them all. Exactly as promised. Exactly as calmly as he had promised it. This is what happens when you exit the economy of provocation entirely. You stop spending energy on reactions. You stop subsidizing other people's chaos. You save everything and spend it with precision, exactly when and where you choose. The men who feel most dangerous in any room are not the ones with the loudest reactions. They are the ones whose silence costs the most. Become financially sovereign with your own neurochemistry. Treat every provocation like a terrible investment pitch. What exactly is the return here? You want me to sacrifice my cortisol baseline, cloud my judgment, and broadcast my vulnerabilities, in exchange for the temporary satisfaction of yelling at someone I do not respect. Request denied. Categorically. Every time. Let the provocation sit unpurchased on the table between you. Watch it rot there while you remain perfectly composed. The silence you offer in return for their investment in your reaction is the most devastating response available. Phase 7, Asymmetrical Agreement. The physics of psychological judo. There will be moments when silence is not available to you. When you are directly confronted. When someone stands in front of you, demands a response, and the social architecture of the situation requires you to speak. In these moments, the instinct is defense. Someone accuses you of arrogance, you explain that you are simply focused. Someone accuses you of coldness, you list the ways you have shown warmth. Someone questions your competence. You catalog your credentials. Stop. Every defense is a concession. When you defend yourself against an accusation, you are implicitly accepting the other person's authority to judge you. You are entering their courtroom, acknowledging their jurisdiction, and presenting your case to their tribunal. You have already lost before you have said a word. You are fighting on their terrain, with their rules, using their frame. There is a principle in physics. If an object is traveling toward you with momentum and you brace for impact, you absorb the full force. But if you step slightly to one side and redirect the momentum in the direction it was already moving, the object loses its balance and collapses under its own weight. The energy that was designed to harm you becomes the mechanism of the attacker's undoing. This is asymmetrical agreement. You do not resist the accusation. You claim it. You pick it up, inspect it, amplify it to a degree of unapologetic, almost surgical precision, and hand it back. Someone tells you, you are arrogant. You act like you are better than everyone. The defensive response, that is not fair. I am just confident. I respect everyone, I just have high standards. That response is a donation to your opponent. You have confirmed that the accusation landed. You have confirmed that their approval matters enough for you to spend energy securing it. The asymmetrical response, meet their eyes, pause one beat, and say, you are right. I hold myself to a standard that most people find uncomfortable to be around. That is a feature, not a flaw. Watch what happens to their programming. They built an attack designed to trigger your shame reflex. Shame only fires when the accused agrees that the accusation represents a deficiency. When you agree with the accusation but frame it as an asset, the attack misfires. The circuit cannot complete. They are standing with a weapon and the target has just agreed the weapon is sharp, thanked them for confirming it, and kept walking. Someone says, you are impossible to work with. You reply, I do not compromise on quality or integrity. That does make things harder for people who prefer to do both. I can live with that. Someone says, you think you do not need anyone. You reply, I am deeply selective about the people whose opinion of me I find worth weighing. Yours may not be on that list. The technique is not aggression. Aggression is the response of someone who still feels threatened. This is something colder than aggression. It is dismissal dressed as agreement. You are not fighting them. You are not acknowledging them as a combatant worthy of real energy. You are confirming their premise, removing its sting, and continuing on your trajectory as though the entire interaction was a minor footnote. The manipulator's toolset is built on leverage. They need a gap between what you are and what you wish you appeared to be, because that gap is where shame lives, and shame is the lever. When you eliminate the gap by claiming every shadow of yourself openly and without apology, you eliminate their leverage entirely. There is nothing to threaten you with when you are already standing in full light. Phase 8, the death of the ego, your final upgrade. All of this, the sovereign gap, the clinical pity, the physiological reset, the asymmetrical agreement, every tool in this architecture has a single load-bearing wall. And if you do not address it, everything built on top of it will eventually collapse under sufficient pressure. That wall is the ego. The ego is not your identity. The ego is your identity's public relations department. It is the part of your psychology that monitors how you are being perceived, compares that perception to the narrative you have built about yourself, and triggers defensive responses whenever the gap between them widens. It is protective, in the way that a paranoid bodyguard is protective, technically performing its function, but creating far more conflict than it prevents. The ego is also, critically, a target. Its size is proportional to your vulnerability. The larger the ego, the more surface area you present to the world. The more invested you are in being perceived as competent, respected, intelligent, or powerful, the more precision a skilled provocateur has in finding the angle that destabilizes you. They are simply looking for the place where the image matters most and pressing there. The solution is not to shrink into false humility or perform indifference as a social strategy. It is to genuinely, at the level of operating belief, remove the ego's authority over your emotional state. Marcus Aurelius practiced something his Stoic tradition called the decomposition of value. He would take objects of desire or status and strip them methodically of their perceived significance, reducing them to their actual physical reality. A fine wine, fermented fruit juice. An imperial robe, wool colored with shellfish secretions. The applause of a crowd. Air vibrating against eardrums. He was not being nihilistic. He was performing a specific cognitive exercise to prevent the ego from attaching value to things that were, in physical reality, neutral. Because anything your ego attaches value to becomes a point of vulnerability. The moment you need to be seen as powerful, someone can threaten that need and own you. Apply this to human opinion. What is an insult, decomposed to its physical reality? A person opening their mouth, moving air through their vocal cords, producing pressure waves, which travel across a room and vibrate your eardrums. That is the complete physical reality of an insult. It is noise. It is air in motion. The rest, the sting, the wound, the lingering replays, are entirely the creation of your ego, attaching significance to a wave of compressed gas. Now ask the question that dissolves the ego's authority most efficiently: whose judgment am I allowing to affect me? Look carefully at the people whose opinions have historically destabilized you. Do they have the life you are building toward? Do they possess a mind you genuinely respect? Are they operating from a place of integrity, clarity, and self-mastery? In almost every case, the answer will be no. The people most eager to diminish you are precisely the people most diminished themselves. They are chaotic where you are trying to build order. They are impulsive where you are trying to develop discipline. They are reactive where you are trying to become deliberate. Why, then, are you ceding authority over your inner state to the judgment of people you would not hire to manage a small aspect of your life? This is the central absurdity of ego-driven reactivity. It makes you a servant to the assessment of people you do not respect. You crave validation from the exact minds you have deemed unworthy of validation. The circle is not just painful. It is philosophically incoherent. Kill the craving. Not by pretending you do not have it. By examining it directly, understanding its source and insecurity, and choosing to withdraw its authority over your behavior. Let them misread you. Let them mischaracterize you. Let them build a version of you in their minds that is wrong in every particular. Their perception is their own closed system. It has no jurisdiction in your actual life unless you grant it. What remains when the ego stops requiring external confirmation is something considerably more stable and considerably more powerful, a self that exists independently of observation. A man who is the same in a crowd as he is alone. Whose standards, whose values, and whose sense of worth are internally generated and internally maintained. This man cannot be provoked. Not because he has suppressed something. Not because he is performing composure. But because the mechanism that converts external input into internal pain has been decommissioned. The server is offline. The signal arrives and finds nothing to attach to. Phase 9, the permanent state, what you become. This is not something you decide once and then possess. This is a construction project. It is daily, deliberate, often unglamorous. There will be moments when the heat rises and the old wiring fires before the new architecture can engage. This is expected. It is not failure. It is the process. The neurological reality is that every time you successfully intercept a trigger response and redirect it through the sovereign gap, you are literally reinforcing new neural pathways. You are rewiring, not through positive thinking or affirmation, but through repeated behavioral evidence that you are capable of the response you are choosing. The brain consolidates patterns that are repeatedly executed. The more times you practice the clinical pity frame, the more automatic it becomes. The more times you execute the physiological reset under pressure, the faster your nervous system learns to execute it without effort. You are training a new default state. The men who have built this permanently describe a specific perceptual shift. A kind of quiet clarity that settles over social situations. They begin to see what was always there but invisible when emotion clouded the view, the strings. The invisible mechanisms that pull most people into predictable, reactive, readable patterns. The way a sarcastic comment from a manager pulls an employee into defensiveness. The way a passing dismissal from a colleague sends someone home carrying resentment for the rest of the day. The way a stranger's opinion in a comment section can poison an entire morning. These mechanisms become visible. And once visible, they are no longer operational on you. You will begin to notice something unsettling about the people around you. Most of them are not steering. They are being steered. Their emotional states are largely determined by whatever stimuli they encountered most recently. They arrived at work already programmed by a bad commute, a difficult text message, a slight from a family member. They will spend the day reacting to inputs, adjusting their inner state based on the quality of external events, and they will call this experience living. You will be doing something different. You will have entered a room already knowing your state. Already having set the interior temperature of your mind deliberately, as a choice made before the first interaction of the day. The room will do what rooms do, it will present friction, disappointment, provocation, and surprise. You will observe all of it. You will engage strategically with the fraction that genuinely merits your energy. You will allow the rest to pass through you without purchase. This is the difference between a man who is moved by everything and a man who moves deliberately through everything. It is important to understand what this is not. This is not coldness toward life. The Stoic tradition is frequently misread as an argument for emotional numbness, for treating the world with the indifference of someone who has given up caring. That is not what this is. The goal is not to feel nothing. The goal is to feel only what you have chosen to feel, about the things you have chosen to care about, in the proportions that serve your actual life. You still feel. You still engage. You still pursue, connect, love, and lose with the full weight of a human being. But you do it on your terms. Not on the terms of whoever walked into the room last with an intention to disrupt you. The final transformation is this. The world stops being a place that happens to you and becomes a place you happen through. You are no longer a surface that every wind leaves a mark on. You have become the kind of fixed point that other people adjust around, not because you demand it, but because your consistency, your composure, and your refusal to be steered make you the most stable object in any room you enter. That stability is magnetic. It is also, to the right people, deeply threatening, because it exposes by contrast how thoroughly they are being controlled by forces they have never examined. Let them be threatened. Let them be confused. Let them attempt to destabilize something that has been deliberately made unsteadable. You remain still. You remain clear. You remain, in the most precise sense of the word, untouchable. The noise the world makes when it tries to reach you will be interesting to observe. But it will be only noise. And you will keep walking.